Hi, I'm Rowan, and my parents gave away the house I spent 5 years paying for, without ever telling me. That should have been enough, right? But then, they tried to take my lake house too, the one I bought with my own money. They used an old key, moved in behind my back, and when I pushed back, they made me the villain. What happens when the people who raised you are the same ones who betray you? The flowers were perfect. Pale blush peonies in glass vases, cascading down white-clothed tables like something out of a bridal magazine. The lighting was soft, romantic. Even the napkins were monogrammed. My sister Briar had planned her wedding with the kind of detail that made people feel lucky just to witness it. Caleb and I arrived early enough to avoid the awkward family shuffle. He looked sharp, as always. Cool gray suit, no tie, quiet confidence. I wore a navy silk dress, the one that always made me feel slightly overdressed, but safe. We walked in hand, and I smiled, because that's what you do at weddings. You smile. Then I saw them. My parents were across the room, fussing over Briar's boutonniere and bouquet like two doting stage managers. My mother was beaming, an unfiltered, glowing pride I hadn't seen on her face in years, not even at my wedding. They didn't look like people burdened by debt or age. They looked 10 years younger, lit from within, and something in me twisted. I swallowed it. I'd learned how. Years of being the responsible one teaches you how to smooth your own edges. Still, I couldn't stop staring. 2 weeks ago, I heard my mother on the phone with Briar. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the walls in our kitchen are thin, and she was on speaker. "Don't worry," she said. "It'll be perfect. He'll make the announcement after the toast." I'd chalked it up to wedding details. A surprise dance? A family slideshow? I told myself I was reading into it, as usual, overthinking, being paranoid. But standing there, watching them practically buzz with excitement, I knew. I knew something was coming, and it wasn't going to be confetti and tears of joy. The ceremony passed in a blur. Briar looked radiant, of course, and Drew, her new husband, wore that dazed, deeply in love expression that made women over 50 cry. I clapped, I smiled, I took photos, and when it was over, we filed into the reception hall, where wine flowed and speeches began. Caleb whispered, "Want to sneak out early?" I shook my head. "Not yet." Then my mother clinked her glass. "I want to thank everyone for being here," she said, standing beside my father, her hand on his arm. "Briar is our heart. Watching her grow into the woman she is today has been the greatest joy of our lives." I forced a smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach your eyes. "And," my father added, unfolding a piece of paper, "as a wedding gift, we wanted to give something meaningful, something lasting." My heart stopped. Mom pulled out a set of keys, holding them up for all to see. "We're giving Briar and Drew the house. Our house. Their new home." Applause exploded around the room. Someone even cheered. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. That house, I had been paying the mortgage for the last 5 years. Every month. Quietly, steadily. After Dad's hours were cut and Mom's arthritis made working impossible, I offered to help. They said it was temporary, said they'd pay me back when things stabilized. They never did. I didn't do it for praise. But I sure as hell didn't do it so they could turn around and gift my sacrifice to someone else. Caleb squeezed my hand under the table. I could feel the tension in his shoulders. "They didn't tell you," he murmured. "No," I said flatly. Across the room, Briar was crying happy tears in Drew's arms, completely unsurprised. Of course she knew. Of course. Inside, something broke. Not loud, not even noticeable, just a clean, silent snap. I clapped, I smiled, I hugged people, I kissed my sister's cheek and told her how beautiful she looked. But in the car, the moment the door shut, I cracked. "They gave her the house." "I know," Caleb said. "The one I paid for." "I know." My voice dropped, and she smiled like it was hers all along. Caleb didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I stared out the window as the city lights bled past. My hands were cold, my stomach hollow. "This doesn't end here," I said. He nodded once. "Good." I couldn't sleep the night after the wedding. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the look on my parents' faces. Radiant, gleaming with pride. and Briar's hands wrapped around the keys like she'd earned them. The applause echoed in my head like a slow, relentless drumbeat. I kept replaying the moment in the reception hall, the casual cruelty of it, the theater of generosity staged at my expense. And me? I was the one smiling through it, clapping, swallowing the scream in my throat like champagne gone bitter. Back at home, Caleb had made tea. He said nothing, just sat beside me on the couch while I scrolled through old texts. Briar's messages from the past few months now read like a coded confession, references to big changes, exciting secrets, and one line that punched me straight in the stomach. Can't wait until it's officially ours. I hadn't noticed it then, or maybe I had, and I didn't want to believe it. That next morning, Caleb came into the kitchen with a strange look on his face. He was holding his phone. "I think you need to see this," he said quietly. It was a screenshot of a group text. Drew had left his iPad open in the living room during the wedding weekend. Caleb, grabbing his coat, had noticed the screen light up. The thread was between Briar, our mom, and our dad, the three of them discussing how to time the house announcement. "Let's save it for the reception," Briar had written. "It'll make the moment unforgettable." Unforgettable. That word sliced through me like glass. So she knew. She helped plan it. While I covered part of her wedding costs and tucked $10,000 into an envelope for her big day, she was orchestrating a betrayal that felt biblical. I said nothing for a while. I couldn't. My body went still, like I'd been dropped into a vat of cold water. I'd always known Briar played the golden child role effortlessly. But this wasn't favoritism. This was collusion. Caleb placed his hand over mine. "I know it's not what you wanted to see." "It's exactly what I needed to see," I whispered. That night, I made the mistake of opening Pinterest. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe distraction, maybe answers. What I found was her board, public, not even locked, titled Our Dream Home. Every pin, images of houses with wraparound porches, deep blue shutters, white-paneled kitchens. They were eerily specific, familiar. They were ours. There, among the paint swatches and fireplace ideas, was a photo of our family home, the actual house. And beneath it, Briar had written, "Can't wait to start our forever here." Posted 3 months ago. I closed the laptop. My stomach turned. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated. 16 years ago, at my high school graduation, my parents handed me a card with $50 inside and a casual, "We're proud of you." When Briar graduated 2 years later, they threw her a surprise BBQ and gave her a gently used Mazda with a bow. I'd told myself for years, she's the baby. They're just being practical. But practical doesn't explain this. I remembered what my mother said once when I brought it up. "She needs more help. She's not as strong as you." As if my strength meant I didn't deserve kindness. As if my independence was an excuse to abandon me in plain sight. That night I texted Briar. "Did you know about the house?" 3 dots appeared, then stopped, then started again. Her reply, "I thought you already knew, that's it. No apology, no remorse, just that." I stared at the screen. "That's all you have to say?" No response. I locked the phone, placed its screen down on the table, and sat in silence. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the screaming, plate-shattering way. This was something colder, harder, more final. I took a breath. I'm done pretending we're sisters. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning, buried between spam emails and a grocery delivery receipt. My phone buzzed, and there it was, a cheerful voicemail from my mother, her voice coated in artificial warmth. "Sweetheart, we're having a small dinner this weekend at the house. Briar's cooking. Just family. We'd love to have you and Caleb." She called it the house like it still belonged to her, like I hadn't watched her hand it over without a single glance in my direction. Still, part of me, some desperate, stupid sliver, wondered if this was her way of making things right. Maybe they realized what they'd done. Maybe they wanted to fix it. Caleb was skeptical. "You really want to sit across from them right now?" "I don't want to," I said, "but I need to see what this really is." Saturday came too quickly. I wore black. Not because I was mourning anything, but because it felt appropriate. The air was thick with heat and tension as we pulled into the driveway. Briar's car was already parked neatly beside my parents' old sedan. Inside, the house smelled like roasted garlic and thyme. It was the same scent that used to fill our home on Thanksgiving, back when we still pretended to like each other. Briar greeted us with a smile too wide, too polished. "Come in, you're early." "Didn't want to miss the show," I muttered. Dinner was small talk and tension. Briar served plates like a hostess on cable TV. My mother asked Caleb about his work, as if we hadn't all just gone to war in that very house 2 weeks ago. And then, in the middle of a lull, Marla dabbed her mouth with a napkin and dropped it. "So we've been talking," she said lightly, "and we've decided we're going to move into your lake house." Just like that. Like she was announcing dessert. I froze. Caleb looked at me, waiting. "You've decided?" I asked. "It's quiet out there," she said. "Peaceful. And you don't really use it much anymore." My father chimed in. "We just figured it made sense. You've got space. You're doing well." Like that was all the justification needed. I nodded slowly, my grip tightening around the fork. "So this isn't you asking. This is you informing." "Don't make it a thing," Briar said, not looking up from her wineglass. I smiled, a tight line across my lips. "Noted." We left before dessert. I didn't trust myself to stay. That night, back home, I opened the app connected to the smart locks at my lake house. Mail forwarding alerts, change of address confirmations from USPS. Electricity and water bills had been reinstated, under Gordon Delaney, all dated 3 days before the dinner. I showed Caleb, hands trembling but my voice steady. "They already moved in, at least on paper." He exhaled. "They never intended to ask, just expected you to fold." "They're not just entitled," I said. "They're strategic." And then, that memory hit, like a needle sliding under skin. My mother's voice years ago. "You're so independent, Rowan. We don't worry about you." No, they didn't worry about me. They used me. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed and whispered, more to myself than anyone, "They don't ask. They just take." I could feel the resentment calcify into something sharper, something immovable. That switch inside me, I'd felt it before, but this time, it didn't flip back. The next morning, I drove alone to the lake house. I didn't text Caleb, didn't tell anyone. When I arrived, the porch looked different. Mud tracked across the welcome mat I had picked out years ago. The windows were cracked open, wind stirred the curtains inside. I stood there staring. Then I whispered, "Not anymore." I wasn't expecting the message. It came from Jessica, my cousin who usually stayed out of family messes. She texted one line, "You should know they tried to move in with Briar." I blinked at the screen. Jessica followed up. She told them no, shut the door on them. The silence in my kitchen was immediate and deafening. Caleb was across the room, sorting through mail, but I could feel him pause when he saw my expression. "She refused," I murmured. He looked at me, curious. "Who?" "My parents went to Briar's, tried to move in with her, and she turned them away." Caleb walked over slowly. "That's unexpected." I nodded, stunned more by the fact that Briar had boundaries than by what my parents had done. They gave her everything, and she's the first to shut the door. The irony burned. I didn't know how to feel. Vindicated? Disgusted? Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to scream. I should have been the one to say no first. But I hesitated. I always hesitated. Maybe this was a gift. A strange, cold one, but still. Later that night, while scrolling through my messages, another ping popped up. A screenshot. Jessica again. It was a text from Briar to our mother. "That was your gift to me. It didn't include you." No fluff, no sugarcoating, no kindness. I stared at it for a long time, replaying her words in my mind like a broken recording. Even I wouldn't have said it like that. I didn't know if I was more shocked by the sharpness of the sentence or by how easy it rolled off her tongue. She hadn't defended me. She hadn't said a word when they threw me under the bus. But now that they needed space and convenience, she sliced them out like expired coupons. There it was, confirmation. Briar was never planning to take care of them. They were useful to her until they weren't. Until their presence threatened her peace. And yet, this was the same girl they fought to protect. The same daughter who got the house, the BBQs, the car. The one who needed more help because she wasn't as strong. So what was I? The landfill they could always dump on? I walked outside, needing air. The night was thick with Texas heat, but I didn't feel it. They have nowhere to go now, I said aloud, more to myself than to Caleb. He followed me onto the porch. They burned both bridges. They never thought they needed bridges. They thought we were property. I leaned against the railing, palms tight. And now, they're free-falling. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew what was coming. I held the power now. The lake house was legally mine. The public was starting to learn the truth. And Briar? She'd withdrawn just enough to not look responsible, but not enough to be clean. Still, I didn't feel triumphant. Just heavy. Later that evening, I stood at the kitchen counter with my phone in my hand. I stared at my mother's number for a long time before finally pressing call. She picked up after one ring. Rowan? I'm only going to say this once, I said, voice low and measured. Don't ever assume again. Not with me. There was silence on the line. You had every chance to do right. You chose otherwise. That's on you. Still, no response. I mean it, I added. Let that be your last warning. Then I hung up, and for the first time since that awful wedding day, I felt like the weight wasn't just shifting. It was lifting. It was a little after 2 a.m. when the alert came through. I wasn't asleep. My mind had been cycling through the same loop of anger and disbelief for hours. When the security app on my phone buzzed, I grabbed it instinctively, already dreading what I might see. The front porch camera at the lake house lit up. The feed flickered, then came into focus. 2 figures in the dark. Suitcases. My parents. I sat up. Caleb stirred beside me. They're at the house, I said. What? They're on the porch, with bags. Seconds later, I watched as my father reached under the planter by the door, lifted the small black rock where I'd hidden a spare key years ago, and let my mother unlock the door. The alarm tripped. They hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside anyway. I called the security company with a steady voice that surprised even me. Unauthorized entry, I said. Please notify local police. Caleb was out of bed now, already throwing on jeans. We didn't need to discuss it. We just moved. The drive to Lake Travis was tight with silence. Neither of us turned on the radio. Neither of us spoke. But my chest felt like a fist clenched from the inside out. When we pulled into the gravel driveway, 2 patrol cars were already there. Flashing lights painted the front of my house in alternating blue and red. My parents sat on the porch like nothing was wrong. Mom had a throw blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Dad leaned back with a cup of something hot in his hand. There were boxes stacked neatly behind them. A potted plant. A bag of groceries. Are you kidding me? I muttered. The officer turned as I stepped out of the car. You must be Rowan. I am. Your parents say they had permission. They didn't. Mom stood. Rowan, sweetheart. No. Her mouth snapped shut. I turned to the officer. They broke in using an old emergency key I forgot I gave them 5 years ago. I never granted them permission to stay. Not now, not ever. The officer nodded. Utilities have been activated in a Gordon Delaney's name as of 3 days ago. I didn't flinch. That proves intent. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He nodded again, then turned to his partner. Let's get their statements. I walked past them into the house. My kitchen towels had been replaced with floral ones I didn't buy. A ceramic angel sat above the fireplace. Mom's. One of my paintings was gone. The living room looked lived in. This wasn't desperation. This was calculated. When I stepped back outside, Caleb was already speaking to my father, who looked like he was trying to stay composed. My mother was crying now. You have no idea how hard things have been for us, she choked. We raised you, Rowan. You used me, I corrected. Not raised. Not lately. Where else are we supposed to go? Dad barked. Not my problem, I said. You gave away your house. That was your call. You don't get to make mine for me. The officer turned back to me. Do you want to press charges? I hesitated. Not because I wasn't angry, but because this was bigger than anger. This was about control. Not tonight, I said. But I want them out, now. The officers escorted them off the property. My mother sobbed all the way to the squad car. My father didn't look at me once. I stood there until they were gone, arms crossed, jaw clenched. That night, I changed every lock on the house. Standing alone in the kitchen, I pulled up the security feed again. The porch was empty, the hallway dark, my house, my name, my rules. I whispered into the stillness, "I'm not the same daughter you used to control." And I meant it. I sat at the edge of my bed the morning after the break-in, the weight of it all hanging over me like fog that wouldn't lift. I should have been shattered. Instead, I felt sharpened, focused. Caleb was in the kitchen, clinking mugs, acting normal. But his quiet glances told me he knew something had shifted in me. Not fear, not even sadness, something colder. I opened my laptop and pulled up my property documents. The lake house was still under my name, so far. But I didn't trust so far. Not anymore. "Hey," Caleb said, walking in. "This came in yesterday. I almost tossed it." He handed me an envelope, unmarked but clearly official. Inside was a mailing address change confirmation. Not for bills. For the deed. My heart started pounding before my eyes had even finished reading. I made one call. "Karen, it's Rowan. I need a favor." Karen was a friend from law school, now a senior partner at a real estate firm downtown. She didn't ask questions, just said, "Give me 48 hours." She called back in 12. "I pulled filings from the county recorder's office," she said. "There's a quitclaim deed transferring title of the lake house to Briar Langley." I stopped breathing for a moment. "Effective date?" I managed. "Last week. But here's the kicker. It's signed by you." "What?" "She used a power of attorney. Says it was granted years ago." I almost laughed. It was, and I revoked it 3 years ago. "Then this is bad. You've got a forgery and a fraudulent transfer on your hands." I hung up, sat back, and stared at the ceiling. My parents hadn't just crossed a line. They torched the map and drew a new one. The next day, Karen emailed me a scanned copy of the documents. I opened the attachment expecting the usual bureaucratic garbage. But what caught my eye wasn't the legal jargon. It was the letter. A typed note from me, thanking the county for processing the title change and praising Briar for handling family affairs with such grace. I never wrote that. I never used those words. But my name was there, neatly signed at the bottom. Caleb leaned over my shoulder. "That signature looks off." I shook my head. "No, it looks familiar." And then it hit me. 3 years ago, Briar had sent me a birthday card, one of the rare moments she remembered. I still had it tucked in my drawer. I pulled it out, laid it next to the forged letter. Same signature, same curve in the R, the same shaky tail on the N. She'd copied it. Digitally or by hand, I didn't care. But it wasn't just my mother now. Briar was in on this. She executed the lie. The betrayal didn't just sting anymore, it burned. "I need a lawyer," I said. "I thought you were a lawyer," Caleb replied, but gently. "Not today. Today I need one with teeth." The next morning, I sat across from a man in a glass office downtown, documents spread out before him. "This is bad," he said plainly, "but fixable. You'll need to file an injunction to stop any title movement, and then we start the fraud process. Civil, maybe criminal. And they'll know I'm coming." He looked at me. "Are you okay with that?" I nodded. "I'm done giving them the benefit of the doubt. They made this legal. So will I." Back at home, I opened a new folder on my desktop titled Action, Screenshots, Voice Memos, Bills, Timeline, Witness List. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I organized. That night, I stayed late in my home office, typing, compiling, remembering every time I let something slide because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. Let them say I turned cold. Let them call me heartless. They took my silence as weakness. Let them learn otherwise. I opened the filing portal, uploaded the paperwork, and hit submit. Let's see how they like it when they're the ones being served. For a few days, I allowed myself to believe it was over. The house was locked down. The court had my paperwork. I was back at work, fielding emails, attending meetings like nothing had collapsed behind the scenes. I wasn't okay, but I was functioning. That felt like enough. Then Caleb said something over coffee one morning that stopped me mid-sip. "Don't mistake silence for peace." I looked at him. "Your mother's never gone quiet without planning something." He was right. Silence from my mother was never surrender. It was a smokescreen. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing. One message, then another. then 3 more. People I hadn't heard from in months, old coworkers, my aunt in Michigan, a college roommate, suddenly popping up with the same thing. Have you seen what your mom posted? I opened Facebook. The post was public. My mother had uploaded a black and white photo of her and my dad in their wedding attire, standing proudly in front of the old house. The caption read like a eulogy and a court brief at the same time. After all we've done, after raising her, loving her, giving her everything we had, we were cast aside like strangers, abandoned by the daughter we thought would carry our legacy. We are in our 70s. We have health issues, and now nowhere to go. It breaks my heart to say this, but it's clear. Rowan no longer considers us her family. There were hashtags, #FamilyBetrayal, #elder abuse, #abandoned parents, and comments. So many comments. Disgusting. What kind of daughter turns her back on aging parents? She always seemed cold, even as a kid. I hope she rots in that lake house alone. Hundreds of likes, shares, distant relatives chiming in with fake concern or worse, backhanded sympathy for my parents. My blood turned to ice. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stared at the screen until the words stopped looking like English. Later that night, Caleb found me in the bathroom. The floor was cold against my legs, my back against the tub. Lights off. They're winning, I whispered. He didn't flinch. He just sat beside me. Then it's time you stop playing defense, he said. I turned my head slowly. You think I should respond? I think it's time you stop letting them define the story. The next day it got worse. Someone dug up a photo from high school. Me, standing off to the side of a class picnic. Alone, arms crossed. The caption, "She was always distant. No wonder she turned out like this." Church people I hadn't seen in 20 years posted about the daughter who forgot who raised her. Even people I barely remembered were resharing the post, adding their own little stabs. She never fit in. She was always too proud. She thinks she's better than the rest of us. It wasn't just about the house anymore. This was everything I'd ever done, or not done, turned into fuel. They weren't just attacking my actions. They were reshaping my identity. And for the first time, I felt it crack. All the composure, all the distance. It fractured like glass. I stayed offline, canceled meetings, slept through texts, ignored calls, food lost taste, water felt like air. On the 3rd day, I logged back in, not to post, not yet, but to save. Every comment, every timestamp, every thread of lies. I opened a new folder on my desktop. Counterattack. They wanted this public? Fine. Let's see who burns first. The silence didn't break. I did. 3 days without logging into anything. 3 days of ignoring texts, declining calls, and letting work emails pile into oblivion. My phone had turned from a weapon into a wall. But that morning, I woke up before the alarm, eyes wide open and dry. I was done hiding. Caleb was already in the kitchen when I walked in, hair tousled, still in a sleep shirt. He didn't say anything when he saw me pick up my laptop and open the folder I'd named Counterattack. Click after click. Screenshots, posts, every comment with my name in it. Some were cruel, some were subtle. All of it fed the fire I now had no interest in extinguishing. I opened a new document and started to write. Not a rant, not a threat. A record. This is what happened, I typed. 5 years ago, I began paying the mortgage on my parents' home when they couldn't afford it anymore. I did it without fanfare, quietly, because they needed help. I never imagined they'd hand that same house to my sister like I never existed. Caleb came up behind me and rested his hands on my shoulders. This time, he said, make them answer for it. I wasn't even halfway through my draft when my phone buzzed again. It was a link, sent by a former coworker. Subject line, "You've seen this, right?" I clicked. GoFundMe. Title, "Help our parents start over after being abandoned." Photo, my parents sitting on a bench in front of a rundown apartment building. Written by Briar Langley. She wrote about their golden years, their heartbreak, and a daughter who turned her back. She didn't name me directly. She didn't need to. There was a section labeled, "Their only vacation home was cruelly reclaimed." Reclaimed, as if it had ever belonged to them. $6,725 already raised. Comments flooded the page. This breaks my heart. Can't believe someone would do this to their parents. She must be a monster. I nearly threw my phone. I didn't. Instead, I searched her name. That's when I found it. The podcast teaser. A well-known family lifestyle show featuring Briar Langley, a daughter's stand for her parents. The audio clip played automatically. She just closed the door. I begged her, and she looked at me like I was nothing. No mention of the title transfer. No mention of the mortgage I paid. Just heartbreak, staged and sold. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened my draft again. This time I attached everything. The mortgage payment records. The deed still in my name. The security footage from the lake house. The revoked power of attorney. The fraudulent quitclaim. I ended it with 12 words. They broke into my home. I called the cops, and I posted it. Within an hour, the likes started. Then the shares. Then the shift. People began asking questions, digging deeper, comparing dates, wondering aloud why Briar hadn't disclosed any of the documents I shared. Someone flagged the GoFundMe for potential fraud. By that evening, it had been frozen. I didn't feel triumphant, just clearer. Distant relatives messaged apologies. Co-workers sent hearts. One woman I barely knew emailed me a single sentence. "You did the right thing." That night, my attorney called. "We have grounds to press charges. Fraud, possibly defamation. If you want to escalate, now's the time." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the folder I'd built. The evidence, the silence, the fire. "Let me think," I said softly, "about how loud I want to be." Everything eventually quiets. After the last post, the last comment, the last share. The silence didn't feel like resolution. It felt like aftermath. The podcast that once promoted Briar's side retracted portions of her interview in a muted Instagram story. Portions of the episode were unverifiable, they wrote, in a font smaller than their logo. No apology, no real correction, just retreat. But it was enough. Enough to slow the momentum, enough to shift the tone. Comments stopped being one-sided. A few distant relatives messaged to say they were sorry they jumped to conclusions. Some just deleted their posts without a word. Most stayed silent, and I didn't chase them. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I read the silence not as forgiveness, but as clarity. I saw people for what they were when they thought I couldn't speak for myself. That was more valuable than any apology they could pretend to mean. And then, one morning, I got the voicemail. It started with static. Then her voice, quiet, small, stripped of its usual steel. "I know you hate me," Mom said. "I don't blame you. We're struggling. But I wanted you to hear me say it. I was wrong." There was a pause, a breath, like she was choking on the next sentence, but it never came. She hung up. It wasn't an apology. It was surrender. It was survival. I stared at my phone, trying to feel something. I didn't. Instead, I grabbed a pen and opened a fresh page in my journal. I wrote a letter, just for me. "Dear Mom and Dad, I spent years waiting for you to see me, really see me, not as the strong one, not as the one who didn't need anything, but as your daughter, as someone who wanted to matter. I don't need that anymore. I'm not writing this to forgive you. I'm writing this because I'm finished letting you live rent-free in my mind. I don't hate you. I just want you gone from my life." Rowan. I closed the journal. No ceremony, no tears. Later that week, a friend forwarded me a text from a PR contact. Briar's GoFundMe had been shut down for misleading content. Sponsorships were quietly pulling back. The podcast wouldn't return her calls. The sympathy platform she'd built was collapsing, not publicly, not with fireworks, but with the soft hush of a house sinking in silence. There was no apology from her either, no confrontation, just nothing. And honestly, I preferred it that way. I didn't need drama to know I'd won. I didn't need a stage to reclaim my life. I listed the lake house as a short-term rental, updated the locks, posted a new blog piece titled, "Family is Not Ownership." It picked up more traction than anything I'd written in years. Strangers emailed. One said, "Your story made me feel less alone." That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and no plans. The wind was light, the sky turning the color of copper and comfort. No voices in the background, no family demanding more, just quiet. I didn't get the ending I wanted. I got something better, my own. Some endings aren't clean. They're not wrapped in neat apologies or grand reconciliations. Sometimes, closure is just finally choosing yourself and living in that choice without guilt. Looking back, I don't regret walking away. I regret how long I stayed quiet. Family doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes it means expectations, obligation, control. But healing begins the moment you stop trying to be who they needed and start becoming who you are, unapologetically. If you're in a place where love feels conditional, where you're constantly proving your worth, I want you to know this. You don't owe anyone your peace. Not even your parents, not even your blood. Let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away from someone you once thought you'd never leave? What gave you the strength to finally do it? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this video resonated with you, if it hit a nerve, made you feel seen, or just made you pause, type 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't speak to you, I'd love to know why. Let's talk. Let's heal. Together. And if you want to hear more stories that reflect real life, real choices, and the power behind them, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything.